In the bag here is the keel centering kit from Catalina Direct. This one's for the Catalina 25 or the C250 Catalina. In the bag we have the spacer discs. They come in different thicknesses for both sides of the keel, where you can either use individual ones if your space is close, or glue them together where you could actually create almost 3/4 of an inch of space that you can make up. Also, piece of sandpaper for sanding the paint off the keel. These have to be epoxied right onto clean metal, but I would use another form of sanding than that. Also, 2-part epoxy and a mixing stick for the 2-part epoxy, pair of gloves for your hands, and an information sheet. The information sheet says to raise the keel up all the way. The spacer goes up 3/4 of an inch above the bottom of the boat, 3.5 inch centered back, and then they want you to make a piece of wood 18 inches long where you go 6.5 inches back, stick it up in there, and you measure to it, and if you have, say, 1/2 inch on one side and 1/4 inch on the other side of the keel, that would be a total of 3/4, so they would suggest that you use 2 3/8 spaces to center the boat and center the keel. And that's pretty much it. The next step, I will show the installation. Step 1 would be to prepare the keel for the disc to be glued on. And the information pack said that you needed to remove all the paint. So what I did was I measured 3.5 inches in, which they said to in the paperwork, and the spacer disc goes up 3/4 above the surface. They're around 3 inches. So in this general area here, I'm going to sand out for the disc to be glued directly onto this steel keel itself. The next step here is to figure out how big the spaces need to be on either side of the keel, and the way you do that is to measure up inside the keel trunk with the stick. Put a mark on the stick 10 inches down, and you're supposed to insert it 6.5 inches back up to that mark and then measure. Problem here is that I'm already hitting on this side. On the other side here, when I inserted it, I had a 3/8 space. Now my situation is that I got 1/2 inch of play here on the keel pivot, and it's rubbing against it on the other side. So what they want you to do is to divide that space equally, and if I'm hitting here with an 1/8 inch thick stick and I have a 3/8 space here, there's a 1/2 inch of issue there to work with, so I should have a 1/4 inch on each side, but a 1/4 inch is not going to work here. So I don't know what I need to do to fix my situation. I'm just gonna I called Catalina Direct thinking that my situation was unique. Apparently it's not. They actually made me call back because I guess they needed to speak to somebody to find out what my situation was, which I had mentioned in the previous video. Here I've taken 2 discs, covered them in 5-minute epoxy. I've made a mark 3/4 of an inch because that's the amount that goes above the keel, and I've got my centering line here. So I'm just going to stick the 2 halves together and put them on my centering line 3/4 of an inch above. Press that into place and tape that in place. I spoke to Catalina and they said to follow the information exactly as they had it, because the shape of the keel where I measured versus the shape of where it will be when it's in place vary slightly, and to follow the directions exactly. So if your situation is the same as mine, where you were rubbing against one side and you were off on the other, but it hitting the keel trunk, just follow what they say and it should work. Hopefully that will be the case, and that's pretty much it, the shim kit. That's one side, and I need to show you the other side. Well, good luck.